How's it, guys? Welcome to my channel, also known as Dope Cousin Bassing. This will be my first official review, guys, and today we will be reviewing the Shimano Chronarch Ci4 Plus. Now, the thing I like about the Shimano Chronarch, the new Ci4 specifically, is it's such a versatile reel, guys. Now, when I do a review, I don't like to be what they call a box reader, okay? You know, the stats are very important. I know a lot of you want to know about the gear ratios, the bearing counts, what the things are made of, but it's quite easy to just simply go onto the net and just Google whatever you want, or check the iCast videos, and they will normally do the box reading. They will say things like, it's got X-ship, it's got SVS, it's Ci4 Plus material. But what does that mean to the average Joe on street? Why would you want to buy? Why would you buy into these selling gimmicks? Okay, now what I'm going to try and do is explain to you why I prefer the Chronarch Ci4 and why it is one of the workhorses that I use in my fishing arsenal. The big advantages, guys, with the Chronarch Ci4 is the fact that it weighs in at a mere 6.5 ounces. Okay, now I'm going into the stats a little bit because I need to try and paint a picture about what the reel is about and why I have made the decisions I have on my reel purchases. Now, if you look at the Chronarch Ci4, the weight at 6.5 ounces balances out pretty much any sort of rod, whether you're fishing a 6'6" medium action or a medium light for topwater baits, whether you're going to put it on a 7'11" or an 8-foot flipping stick, guys. You won't really see, if you're using a good quality rod, you won't notice any sort of tip heavy feel, yet it's light enough to enjoy it the whole day. So it is a nice compromise, guys, and for the price point, it's quite a bit cheaper than your previous generation Shimano cores. Let's say like things like the Shimano Antares. If you look at things like the Metanium, it's probably the closest rival to the Ci4, and although slightly a bit more refined, I won't justify the extra costs. I can't justify paying 30 or 40% more for a reel that pretty much does the same thing. Now, your Shimano Chronarch Ci4 basically comes in two ratios. Okay, you've got a 7:6:1, which is called the HG. That will be the reel that I am reviewing now, and then you get the normal 150, which is a 6:4:1 ratio. Okay, the big styling differences, there is slight cosmetic differences when it comes to the two reels. You'll notice that the spool tension cap as well as the handlebar is black on the normal 150. The 150 HG has got this silver with some red accents, as well as a silver or almost a gunmetal sort of handle on it. So those are the key characteristic, the styling differences between the reel. But obviously both of them in essence are the same reel. The other thing I really enjoy about this reel is the fact that I'm comfortable throwing anything on these reels. I'm comfortable pitching and flipping a jig or a creature bait into a heavy slop. I'm perfectly comfortable throwing a spinnerbait or a chatterbait or fishing plastics. And the fact that it's got a 150 size spool means that it's very versatile. The spool has got it's got a low enough startup inertia that allows me to fish smaller baits that used to be reserved primarily for spinning outfits. I mean, I can fish drop shots, I can fish light plastic baits, I can fish light jerk baits. The only thing I need to do is slightly scale down my line and maybe scale down my rod action, you know, get the rod action suited to the application that you're going to be using it for. Whether I want to bomb out a frog 60, 70, 80 yards using 65-pound braided line, I can do that. Okay, I can honestly say that I can comfortably drop down to about 6-pound test on this reel. The reason I say that is the drag on this reel is very, very consistent. there's no jittery, there's no stuttering in the drag. It's a very consistent drag. So if you are going to be fishing a very light line and a fish makes a sudden dart for cover or something, or it bursts away from the boat, you will notice that the drag will really hold up to the abuse. I've noticed that the reel performs equally well whether you're fishing mono lines, fluorocarbon lines, which tends to bubble a little bit more easy, braided lines. The Shimano Chronarch really does it all. And the other thing that Shimano really pulled off, in the beginning I wasn't really a big fan of the SVS braking system, because I've noticed on the previous Curado 200i that I was using, if I went 1 or 2 fishing trips without lubricating the brake drum, which we will get to in a moment, it tended to make a bit of a noise. And then if you angle the reel slightly to the side and you make a cast and your spool tension knob's quite loose, you'll notice that it makes a grinding sound. And some people might think that there's something wrong with the reel, which it's not. Now, what I've noticed with the Ci4 is the fact that Shimano has pulled this SVS thing off very well. I'm not sure what they have done differently on this compared to the other reels, your Citica, your Curado, even the previous. There are so many. There were so many offerings, and I think it bugged quite a few people. And you'll notice with your new Metanium, your new Curado 70, the new updated SVS2 system has come out. So let's hope when we do the future reviews that we'll notice out on the water that the new SVS makes a bit of a difference. So it is slightly more high maintenance than the previous VBS system you used to use, that we used to have, that simply just had little pull-out pins. But it has got its advantages as well. I mean, we are keeping up with the times. Now, if I open up the side plate of the reel, guys, please be very careful when you do this on the water, because it's not just simply got one of those little keepers on the side that's got a little spring attached to it that keeps the side plate in place, okay? It physically comes off completely. Now, if you notice on the inside, there are these little claws, these little brakes that with the centrifugal force, when you make a cast, obviously when the spool really starts spinning up, these little claws starts opening up, and this is what makes contact with this small little brake pipe. Now, sorry for the lighting, but you'll notice that there's this copper brake pipe on the inside. It's almost in a cone shape. Now, that needs lubricating quite regularly. Less so than with the Citica and Curado I, but it still does need a level of lubricating. Now, you'll notice that it's got a few settings which makes on the fly adjustments quite easy. It's not like in the past where you simply had to open up the side plate and you had to shift around a few pins to get the optimal braking force that you want. I've noticed over the years with Shimano, if you've got 2 pins up on opposite sides of the spool, which balances out quite nice, you've got so much control by simply just using your spool tension cap. Now, sometimes if you have to tighten it a little bit too much, you'll notice that in the retrieve it starts feeling a little bit highly strung or tight. If you don't like something like that, rather put on 3 brake blocks and back down on your spool tension knob. Now, you'll notice that with the Chronarch Ci4, you have got a few settings ranging from 1, and it's got the micro click adjustments, all the way up to 6. Now, if I put this on 1, you'll notice that the brake pipe has been protracted completely. And the moment I start opening up towards 6, you'll notice that the brake pipe starts protruding quite a bit more. So obviously, because it's in a cone shape, the further the brake pipe comes out, the more contact surface these little weights have that makes contact on the little brake pipe, okay? And that just makes it a little bit easier. You know, in the past, you had to really rely on using your spool tension cap quite extensively. I feel with this system, you don't really need to make those adjustments using your spool caps quite as much. Now, the thing that I've noticed is when I've set up my reel properly, I really don't have to select different settings on lure weights. That really, the spool, guys, spools up so nicely, and if you've got it dialed in quite effectively, then you'll notice that overruns are a thing of the past. You really don't get overruns that easily. Where I tend to use this little the settings here on the side is when I notice when the wind starts pumping. You know, if I'm fishing a spot and the wind starts to pump from the front, then obviously I'm going to start tightening it a little bit more, you know, sort of going more towards your 6s, your 5s, your 4s. When you've got a bit of wind coming from the back, it makes a massive difference. That's when you start dropping down to 1 and 2, and the lure simply bombs it out there. Okay, so I think if you have to take all the advantages of, let's say, a Shimano Aldebaran, which is basically a finesse reel, and you've got to take the advantages of, let's say, a core, which is quite a lightweight reel, and the usability and the refinement of the more premium reels like your Metaniums and your Antares reels, you'll notice that your Chronarch is really a good bet, guys. The other thing I really like about it is, like I said, the 150 spool. When using something like a Metanium, using a 100 size spool, when you get into the thicker lines, because of its casting range, it's quite easy to basically throw a whole spool of line out. So you might not get the same distance that you would using a 150 or 200 size spool. When you start going to the 200s, the big problem that you're sitting with there is the fact that because the spool can carry quite a lot of line, and you get so much line on the spool that it negatively affects the weight of the spool. Obviously, the heavier the spool with your line is, the more erratic and the slower the starting up inertia is going to be. So a 150 size spool, guys, is really, really fantastic. I've been using this reel quite extensively, and I have to say that it simply bombs casts out there just as well as I do with, let's say, a Core 100 or a Core 50. I've dropped down. Obviously, a reel like an Aldebaran might have a slight advantage when it comes to the overall weight, or simply flipping and pitching baits that are slightly lighter. But that is something that you hardly ever do. Really, when you drop down to a 6-pound line or an 8-pound line and you use the right rod for it, guys, you can really start dropping the casting weight on this reel like you will not believe. It would have been awesome if this reel came out in a 5-to-1-1 ratio, especially for crank fishing. So let's see what Shimano decides to do in the future. I mean, this is a reel that compares head to head with the Daiwa Zillion that you do get offered in a multitude of ratios. If you look at the previous generation Chronarch D, the same thing happened. The Chronarch D, you used to get in a 7-to-1-1, and you also used to get it in a 5-to-1-1. With your Curado, a bit more versatile, you used to get a 5-1-1, a 6-4-1 or a 6-3-1, and you also used to get a 7-1-1, okay? With the new XG and PG and the standard Curado. So ratios do fluctuate, but I feel that because it's such a solid reel, and with the technology that's gone into the gearing, guys, that you will be quite comfortable throwing crankbaits, I would say, that runs up to about 12 feet, quite comfortably using the slightly slower 6-4-to-1 ratio. I won't recommend it for the 7-6-to-1. I've noticed that spinnerbaits that uses a slightly bigger blade, or maybe a Colorado blade, anything with a bit more resistance than what you would normally throw, I really have realized that it does take a bit of strain. What's nice about the quicker ratios, obviously, is when you're casting out a frog and you've got to get slack line in quickly, or you're flipping and pitching a bait, and without noticing, the fish starts swimming towards the boat, and you've quickly got to recover the line to set the hook before the bass actually drops the lure. But all in all, guys, I am very, very pleased with the Chronarch. If you decide to buy a Chronarch, please go right ahead and buy a Chronarch. You will not be sorry. Okay, so that's it for me for tonight. We're going to keep it short. We're going to keep it simple, guys. If you've got any questions, remember this is my first review on the reels. If you've got suggestions, throw them out there. I'm going to try and get to as much tackle as what I possibly can, guys, but the world is full of tackle. It is physically impossible to do all of the tackle or review all of the tackle out there, but I will do my absolute best, guys. Have a good one.